Guys, welcome back. Today we're going to change my intake plenum gasket. I had put it back together and I realised that I had a gasket leak, so I just went and grabbed the new gasket from Nissan, and I've also got some new clamps and some hosing that I want to change on the car because it's a bit of a pain to get the intercooler piping on and off with the current clamps that I've got. So we're going to take off this plenum and we're going to change the gasket. And for anybody that's just joining me, I had just finished putting the car back together and I realised on the first start that I had a vacuum leak. So that's why I'm taking off the plenum now to redo it. And if you want to see those videos, you can click up here. There's a whole series of me stripping the car, painting the engine bay, putting it all back together, and rebuilding gearboxes and all the rest of it. So please feel free to go through my videos and check them out. And if you like any of the videos, please subscribe to my channel because there's more coming your way. All right, so without further ado, let's get into changing this gasket. Let's go. All right, guys, very simply, I took off the wiring loom, undid my injectors, took off the wiring loom, moved it over there, took off the intercooler piping because you need to be able to move the plenum. And there's a bracket down here, this bracket here. Now there's two 12mm bolts that connect to it, and then underneath the car, there's that 14mm there. Now if you don't undo that 14mm, the bracket's not gonna move. And if you don't loosen this bracket, you're not gonna get the plenum off, all right? So now that we've got all that out of the way, now it's time to do the 8 bolts that hold the plenum to the block, and then the plenum will move. And then I'm just gonna shift it out so I can take the gasket off, put the new gasket on and put it back on. All right, so let's do that. So I've taken off all the bolts at the top. There's one more bolt down the bottom here that needs to come off, and then you can pull it out. As you can see, it's already starting to come apart. So as soon as I undo that one, it'll come off. There's 2 studs and the rest are all just bolts that you put in. So you got to feed it over the 2 end studs. Nice and easy. And then just feed it back on just like that. Alright guys, so all the bolts are on the manifold that connect to the block. Now I've got to tighten up the bolts for the brackets, plumb it all back up, wire it all back up, start it, and see if we've got a gasket leak. Hopefully we don't. And if we don't, we're laughing. But yeah, essentially that's how you change the gasket on an SR20, alright, without taking the whole manifold out and all that stuff. So, whistling sound. Where's it coming from now? I can hear a whistling sound down here. Yeah, really close. I think it's the throttle body. I think it's the gasket on the throttle body. I'm going to take the throttle body off. Alright guys, next day we're going to do a air pressure test. Before I pull the throttle body off, I want to make sure that I can sort of hear where these air leaks are coming from. So we're going to do an air leak test. Alright, so how we're going to do that is I went to Bunnings and I bought myself just a PVC end that's going to sit inside this 3-inch hose. Like so. It's going to have an air compressor fitting screwed to it, and then I'm going to pump 15 psi, 10 to 15 psi of compressed air through the motor. So I'm going to take off the inlet here where the mouth of the turbo is, put the pipe on, and run air through it and see if I can hear any air leaks, all right? Alright guys, compressor's on, compressor's set, the regulator is set. If I turn this on, okay, it's set at like 10-15 PSI. Alright, you ready? I hear a vacuum leak. I don't know from where. Okay, I've got a vacuum leak somewhere over here and I can't pinpoint it. All right, I'm gonna just set the camera up so I can really hone in on it. Found it. The bottom of the throttle body. Oh, I found it. All right, I'll show you again. It's the throttle body. I knew it. Right, so I pulled the gasket off. It's broken. As I pulled the gasket off, it's taken a chunk out of there. It looks like it didn't seat properly. So I'm going to clean all this up again because it was leaking from down here. So yeah, it didn't seal properly. I'm going to clean this properly, clean the manifold properly. But yeah, I think that was the issue. So we're going to do that, put it back on the car and start it. All right, so I've cleaned it all up. Now, putting the gasket on, I don't think that's going to cause an issue having that little chunk at the top because it's still covered by the bolt hole. Well, the other thing I realized was my throttle body wasn't closed all the way. There was like a mil gap all the way around. So that means that my throttle body was open a little bit. So that's probably what was causing the high revs. How I adjusted that was, you see that little nut? You can adjust that and that'll adjust the butterfly inside the throttle bodies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the gasket back on, put the throttle body back on and see if it works. Let's have a go at this. Alright guys, I've got the air on and I've pinpointed. I've got a bit of a leak coming up from the throttle position sensor down here, which you probably can't see. Down there, there is a little rubber grommet and it's coming out of the rubber grommet. So the pin that goes into the throttle body, it's coming out from there. I don't know if I can fix that or the throttle body is stuffed or what. So I've got to work it out. Maybe I can take it off and push it back in somehow. I don't know. All I know is I got to fix that. I think the intercooler piping has to come off again. Spewing. I fixed the leak from the bottom, but it's now coming out of there. I think because I just had the air on and I was letting it, you know, do its thing, all the build-up of air maybe pushed the grommet out. Oh, anyway, maybe I can try and push it back in and see what happens. Leave it with me. I'll see how we go. All right, throttle body's back off. This is what I mean about the throttle position sensor and the rubber grommet. See it? See how it's not seated properly? You have a look on that side, it is. This side it isn't. So I've just created that by pumping air in it and had nowhere to go. So obviously it was really good and then that was a weak point and it's popped out. So it's probably good that I noticed that just in case it decides to go again. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push that back in and hopefully we don't have any issues. There we are. Just pushed it down with a screwdriver and that's seated properly. So it's now time to put this back on the car. Just like that. Intercooler piping. There we go. Now it's time to put the battery and start it. I hope we have no issues. Guys, welcome back. It's the next day. As I started the car and I was running it, my camera died. I ran out of storage. So to give you a bit of an update, I took some footage on my phone of how it was idling. So when I first started it and the IACV, which is the idle air control valve, when the idle screw was all the way closed, it idled rough like this. I opened up the screw, and as the car warmed up, it was idling better. However, I still feel like there's something going on. And what I mean by that is I think it may be an electronic issue, because when I turn the lights on, the revs drop. So the revs were sitting at about 950, 1,000, and then I turn the lights on and it had dropped to 800 or something. To me, it sounds like maybe it's the battery or alternator, or it could be an earthing issue. So we're going to go through and I'm going to make sure that all the earthing is clean and on properly, because where I've painted, it could be some issues, you know what I mean? Like where it's on the body here, it may not be grounded properly, and maybe on the manifold it's not grounded properly. So I'm going to go through it. I've got a multimeter, then I'm going to check the voltage and try and diagnose what the problem is, all right? Oh, the other thing I want to do is take the spark plugs out and have a look to see the gaps. Oh, my compressor. Take the spark plugs out, see the gaps of the spark plugs, check if they're fouled at all, and put them back in, and we'll go from there, all right? Slowly, we're going to diagnose this issue, this idling issue. So let's get to it. All right, so check this out. So I think it is an issue with the ground here that's on the body, because it's painted, the bracket's been painted. I don't think it's getting a good ground, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Is because I'm putting the positive on the battery, right? And keep an eye on the multimeter. When I put it on the screw here, on the screw head, it's 12.79, right? When I put it on the actual metal that it's connected to, watch it go down. Like it's getting 5 volts. If I put it on the screw head on the manifold, 12.8. If I go to the manifold itself, 12.8. So it's getting ground to the manifold, but it's not grounding to the chassis properly. So I'm going to take off this bolt, clean up this down here. I'm going to use sandpaper to get the paint off, and then I'm going to put the bolt back on, and it should ground better. I'm going to clean the actual terminal as well. That's a bit better. All right, I've got my coil packs and my spark plugs out. I'm looking at the spark plugs, and all right, granted they're not brand new, but they don't look like they're that bad either. You know, it could be worse. So I'm just going to check the gaps using a feeler gauge, and if the gaps are all even, then I'm going to put them back in the car, put the coil packs back in the car, and then we're going to look at the next thing. But for now, if I need to change the plugs later, if there's a spark issue, I don't think there's a spark issue. I don't think it's causing the idle issue, but I wanted to check them anyway. And if I need to change these later, I'll take it for a tune, and my tuner we can do it when the car's getting tuned. So, but right now, let's check the gaps, make sure they're all even at least, and then put them back in the car. Yeah, there you go, perfect fit. Yep, 0.032, 0.032. 0.032. Okay, they're all 0.032, which is, I think, standard for SRs. So they're evenly gapped. So now let's put them back in the car, and then we'll look at the next phase. So I've adjusted the IACV, like the throttle screw. I'm tightening this screw all the way down, so the rev should drop. Now if I rev it, watch what happens. Cuts out. If I start it like how it is now, it'll just start and cut out again. If I open this screw up, the idle screw, and then start it, it'll hone a little bit and then it'll come back. I'm just waiting for my tuner to get back to me because I sent him a video and see what he thinks. But I think it's a vacuum leak. He's probably going to tell me it's a vacuum leak, so I think I'll have to pull the manifold back off. I didn't take off the manifold. I spoke to my tuner and I sent him a video of how the car was acting up, and I was showing him the computer settings on the Ep.34 and stuff. He seems to think that it's normal, like everything's looking good. and maybe I was overthinking it, and I thought that I still had a leak, and I was toying around with too many things, and he seems to think that it looks good, everything's fine. We are going to get it dyno tuned, but yeah, all in all, it's on, it's running, and I think we're all good. It's going to drop, it's going to hunt a little bit, and it frees itself up. So obviously the idle screw needs a bit of adjusting. The car seems to be alright, the vacuum's good, everything seems good. So I'm not going to toy around with it anymore. Then we can get stuck on to doing the next thing. But there we have it. Don't ask me, all I know is I think it's fixed and it needs a tune. So I think the air leaks are all gone. And yeah, so we fixed the problem somehow. Guys, if you liked the video, please like, subscribe, stay tuned, because I've got more coming your way, alright? It's your boy, I'll see you soon, peace.